The courtroom hushed, the air thick with anticipation. A black woman in a tailored suit, her demeanor radiating quiet authority, entered the room. Her presence was undeniable, but a security officer, his judgment clouded by prejudice, ignored her credentials. With a sneer, he seized her identification, accused her of forgery, and, before a stunned gallery, attempted to cuff her. He was oblivious to the truth she carried, a truth that, in a mere 7 minutes, would bring his world crashing down. This is the story of Alara Vance, a federal investigator who turned a moment of profound humiliation into a powerful victory. Brace yourself, because what follows will leave you breathless. It was a Tuesday afternoon in a courtroom in Port St. Croix. The atmosphere was suffocating, as if the very walls held generations of untold secrets. Alara Vance, 35, walked in a courtroom 2C with deliberate, measured steps. Her impeccably tailored graphite suit spoke of quiet power. In her hand, a worn leather satchel contained a single flash drive, holding evidence that could ignite a scandal. Recordings, sworn testimonies, and videos exposing a deep-seated network of corruption within the police force. Today, she wasn't merely a witness. She was the spark that would expose a hidden reality. Alara had grown up in Stonehaven, a small town where resilience was honed, not in lecture halls, but on cracked asphalt and kitchen floors. Her mother worked multiple jobs at a clinic, and her father vanished from her life before she turned 11. Alara learned to carry herself with her head held high, even when suspicious gazes followed her. By 14, she had internalized the unspoken rules. Don't draw attention, stay vigilant, and keep your ID in plain sight. This unyielding resolve propelled her to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, not through connections, but through sheer will that made her shine in a world that consistently underestimated her. But that Tuesday morning, as she approached the courthouse checkpoint, a guard stopped her. Officer Reed Thornton, a middle-aged man with over 2 decades on the job, eyed her with open contempt. Her federal badge, held clearly in her hand, was ignored. "That's a fake," Thornton sneered, blocking her way. "You don't belong here." Without a second thought, without verifying her identity, he grabbed her arm, wrenching it behind her back. The sharp click of handcuffs echoed through the silent room, causing the crowd to fall silent. The judge, the legal teams, the journalists, everyone watched. No one intervened. Alara, her cheek pressed against the cold wooden railing, felt a surge of rage far hotter than fear. She wasn't just an agent. She was the lead investigator on a case exposing a corrupt network, a web that included Thornton himself. In her satchel, now on the floor, were the very pieces of evidence that would bring him down, recordings of him fabricating reports, intimidating witnesses, and targeting minority groups. But he had no idea. "Where did you get this badge? Did you steal it?" Thornton mocked, holding her ID as if it were a child's toy. A few nearby officers snickered, but the crowd remained stone-faced. The air grew heavy, pregnant with a brewing storm. On her knees, Alara whispered, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." He laughed, tightening the cuffs, convinced he had silenced her. He couldn't have been more wrong. In a small detention room, Alara sat, the red marks from the cuffs still visible on her wrists. A young deputy quietly offered her a bottle of water, murmuring an apology. She didn't respond. She didn't need sympathy. She needed clarity. What had just occurred was not a misunderstanding. It was a clear and painful reminder of how little the system had truly changed. Even with a badge, a title, and the truth in her hands, she had been reduced to a stereotype in an instant. Outside, the courthouse hummed with activity. Reporters captured clips of the incident on their phones. The images went viral online. The judge called a recess, but everyone knew why. The woman scheduled to testify had been humiliated in front of the very man she had come to expose. But Alara returned to the courtroom. Her testimony was still on the docket. The atmosphere had shifted. Eyes tracked her every move. Phones recorded in silence. The court reporter's fingers hesitated over the keys. When Alara took the stand, her voice cut through the stillness like a knife. "For the past 7 months, I have led a federal investigation into systemic misconduct within the Port St. Croix Police Department, she began, retrieving the flash drive and pointing to the projection screen. The evidence included recordings, fraudulent reports, and doctored body camera footage that revealed a clear pattern of racial profiling and procedural violations. The courtroom froze. Alara played a recording, the unmistakable voice of Thornton ordering another officer to invent charges against a young black man arrested without cause. The young man's mother, seated in the audience, wept silently. Alara continued, her tone relentless. I have a dozen more recordings, all linked to detentions of black citizens under 30, all later dismissed for lack of evidence. The pattern is undeniable. The intent is clear. Thornton, sweating profusely, frantically whispered to his attorney. His earlier arrogance faded with every word Alara spoke. When the prosecutor asked if she could identify the officer who had intimidated her 3 weeks earlier, she answered without a pause. Officer Reed Thornton. The judge, his face grim, confirmed. The same officer involved in this morning's incident? Alara nodded. Yes, Your Honor. That is why I am requesting that the remainder of my testimony be protected under federal privilege. I believe my safety is at risk. The judge agreed, and the mood in the room shifted. Thornton was no longer a figure of authority. He was a name on a file, a voice on a tape, a badge transformed into a weapon. The following day, Alara returned to court in the same suit, carrying the same satchel, but with a different kind of energy. The number of reporters had tripled. Cameras flooded the space, and the entire city was watching. Thornton entered, looking disheveled, chewing gum to mask his nervousness. His swagger had vanished. Alara, however, was ready to complete the circle. The judge announced a federal motion to declassify new evidence. Alara took the floor. I filed an emergency motion this morning, authorized by my federal supervisor. It includes the declassification of new evidence and a request for immediate disciplinary action against Officer Reed Thornton. She pulled out a second flash drive, marked with red tape. It contained 26 minutes of audio from a confidential source who worked under Thornton's command, detailing instructions to manipulate reports, pressure subordinates, and silence citizens. Thornton screamed, "This is a lie. It's a setup." But Alara didn't flinch. Would you like to explain what you meant when you said, "I'm untouchable"? I have the whole system in my pocket? She asked. That's your voice on the tape, isn't it, officer? The judge allowed her to continue. Alara then played a video. Thornton in a dark parking lot, handing over a file with altered statements, his face frozen on the screen in a moment of silent, damning condemnation. Your Honor, we request the immediate detention of Officer Reed Thornton for obstruction of justice and conspiracy to interfere with a federal investigation, Alara stated. The judge, his face grim, commanded, "Sheriff, arrest Officer Thornton." In a state of disbelief, Thornton stammered, "You believe her, not me." But no one came to his defense. The handcuffs clicked onto his wrists, the sound serving as a final, resonant punctuation. Alara stepped close enough for him to hear. "You didn't think I'd get the last word, did you?" The case didn't end with Thornton. Alara, alongside her attorney, Sophia, and a remorseful officer, Mateo Rios, exposed a corruption ring that extended far beyond Port St. Croix. They reopened a 5-year-old case involving a young officer who had attempted to expose abuse and was found dead, an apparent suicide with glaring inconsistencies pointing to murder. That investigation led to a national inquiry, and Alara, a federal force, uncovered systemic patterns of abuse nationwide. Rios testified publicly, inspiring reforms and protections for whistleblowers. Sophia became an unstoppable force in the courtroom. Thornton was convicted on multiple charges. His downfall became a potent symbol that no one is above the law. Alara was promoted to a senior position within the FBI, where she rewrote policies and trained a new generation of agents. But she never forgot the cost. The sleepless nights, the threats, the suspicious glances that followed her. One afternoon in Stonehaven, sitting in her mother's living room, Alara touched an old photo of her father. Her mother, with tears in her eyes, whispered, "He'd be so proud of you." Alara didn't respond, but for the first time in years, she took a deep breath, letting the immense weight on her shoulders lighten, if only for a moment. This isn't just Alara's story. It's a challenge to all of us. What would you do if the system tried to silence you? Would you speak out, even when it's difficult? Would you listen to those who finally find the courage to break their silence? Justice doesn't come with fanfare or rewards. It arrives with scars, sleepless nights, and the simple, radical act of doing what is right over and over again. Alara showed us that one voice can change everything. Now it's your turn. If you'd like to share your thoughts on the story, feel free to let me know. What did you find most compelling about Alara's journey?